For R L Stine, it's better to show your characters' personalities and fears through what they say to each other than to describe their feelings. Every conversation in your book should reveal something about the characters or about the plot. The last thing you want is for your readers to feel like something isn't necessary and they skip it then. Children don't always speak in complete sentences, so don't be afraid to have your characters speak to each other in sentence fragments. It makes your conversation more believable. It's important to make your writing as timeless as possible so it doesn't become outdated too quickly. Avoid modern slang. It's also good to avoid historical references as much as possible. You're writing for a middle school audience that were born in the 2010s and have little appreciation for nuanced details from the 90s. There are two ways to discover your own writing style. One is to simply start writing and find out what kind of language you naturally use. The other is to find an author you admire and model yourself after them first. So imitate them, because imitating others can help you develop your own style. In short, use dialogue to reveal story and character. Make your dialogue timeless and realistic, or at least try to, and try to imitate other writers to find your own style. Writing horror is easier than writing humor. While we all have similar fears, our sense of humor is very different. Avoid putting too much horror in your novel. If you pile on horrible things of another, it will be ridiculous and people won't buy it. Using humor is a good way to find the right balance between fantasy and reality. Remember that a roller coaster that just twists and turns all the time is no fun. For example, R. Stine uses a scene from Young Scrooge, a very scary Christmas story, to illustrate the right balance between horror and humor. In it, Marley's ghost, the same as in Dickens' original story of course, appears before a frightened child who is locked in a closet, only to discover, after a long backstory, that he's in the wrong house. So this is also a good example on how to use twists and turns to build humor into one's scares. The less a character is specifically developed, the more relatable it is to broad audiences. This way, readers can easily empathize with the protagonist and experience the world of the story. To scare your readers, you need to make them feel as much a part of your book as possible. And the more trouble they get into, the better, of course. Put your characters in dicey situations that they have to save themselves from. It's a great way to keep readers engaged and offers a great reward if everything turns out okay in the end. Try to find out what your protagonist wants, what he's striving for, and develop his characters through that inner drive he has. Once R. L. Stine has a story idea in mind, the first thing he does is populate it with characters. To do this, he creates a cheat sheet, as he likes to call them, for each main character with basic information about them, including their appearance, personalities and motivations. This is to establish a general idea of who each character is before they come into full play in this story. It is not necessary to do this for every character, of course. It is quite beneficial to you to leave room for improvisation in the writing. But, however, cheat sheets for all the main characters is an important tool for the future, so you have always a way to look back at it and don't confuse them or mess it a little bit up.
Completing your first draft shows that you can do it. No matter what trouble you have later on, you know you can do it. No matter what.
Focus on working through the story from beginning to end and remember that you can always go back and change things later. If you feel too intimidated by a novel, try a short story instead. R. L. Stine writes his book in a linear fashion. He starts with the first chapter. However, with an outline you can approach your story in any order you see fit. Inevitable, you will make changes to your original plan as you write, and that's of course fine. But remember that as soon as you introduce a new element into your book, such as surprising new characters or plot twists, you need to go back and establish that character or story element early on to prepare your reader for what's to come as the story progresses. If you're stuck at certain points in your draft, it's best to buy it through and just get something down on paper. Everyone has a bad writing day, and you will unfortunately have one too. Just keep going and finish the first draft. Any book you write will go through many revisions before you're done. At this stage you should just sit down and have fun writing. Then when you go back and revise your work, you can take it more seriously, of course. So once it's done, R L Stine recommends printing out the first draft to get a sense of your own accomplishment and enjoy the satisfaction of having accomplished such a daunting task. Be proud of yourself. When you finished your first draft, the first thing you should do is go back to the beginning of your manuscript and read it again carefully. Look for several things. For example, scenes that drag on, characters whose name changes throughout the story. This happened sometime to R L Stine, so well, it could happen to you too. Inconsistencies in setting. For example, one moment it's cloudy and the next is sunny because of no obvious reasons. And try to find, of course, typos. If you feel it's necessary, go back and make the scene scarier by building on the foundation you already have. Try to increase the scares by slowing things down, adding more emotion, or incorporating stronger sensory details. After the first round of revisions, get honest feedback, or at least try to get honest feedback. What does the reader think of the characters? Did it seem realistic? How was the pacing? Did it drag on in some places? All of this is important criticism that you need to move forward. If you find absolutely no one wants to read your manuscript, you should pay someone to do so. Some experienced writers even hire their own editor to read through their material before sending it to a publisher. It's important to take criticism well and use it to improve your writing. Don't be too sensitive. I know it's hard, but Robert knows some authors who refuse to be proofread and he feels the work has suffered as a result. I know it's hard, but try to have a skin of stone. We need to as writers. The great thing about writing is that you can always go back and correct things later. Isn't it great? Remember this when you feel like you're not getting anywhere. Sometimes you feel like what you're doing isn't right or that you're writing uphill, but it's important to just keep going with the thought that you will fix it later. The best way to combat writer's block is to be well prepared when you start writing. Develop a character's cheat sheet and outline that will give you a solid roadmap for the beginning, middle and the end of your story. If you get stuck at a certain point, move on to another scene and return to it later. Writing is easier when you divide things up this way. It's more fun to write than the actual manuscript. You also need to develop a routine to keep at it. An average Goosebumps book has 23,000 words and Bob writes around 2,000 words per day. Of course, that may be ambitious at first, but set a daily writing goal and stick to it. Once you've reached your goal, stop. Even if you're in the middle of a chapter, that way you'll find it easier to pick up right where you left off the next day. It's important to figure out what rituals and tools work for you as a writer. Every person is different and every writer is different. And you need to find out what works for you. Well, thanks for watching the video. If you like to support the channel, please press like, and if you have any idea what I could do next, please leave a comment down below and I'll see you in the next one. Have a wonderful day. Bye!